We're delighted to be joined today by Gurria, the Secretary General of the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. Welcome.
Thank you.
I was wondering if we could start with quite a general question. I mean, from where you're sitting within the OECD, what do you see as the priorities for the London Summit on the 2nd of April?
There are several, the most important of which is to help return the confidence to the markets and to the people in general. The leadership that is going to be assembled there represent a very large proportion of the total wealth of the world, of the population of the world, of the trade of the world. Therefore, it is in their capacity to take the important decisions in order to solve the immediate challenges in the financial system and the banking system, get the banks not only on an even keel, but also to get them back to lending, which is quite critical for the recovery to then take place. Then perhaps move on to the questions of the recovery itself and of the so-called exit strategies, which means how do we do things today that are going to be consistent with the kind of economy that we would like to see in the post-crisis period. And last but not least, continue to take the medium and long-term decisions about the global challenges today, like the fight against poverty, like climate change, the challenges having to do with education, the challenges having to do with the Doha round, etc., that will be of very great consequence for the medium and long term, not only of our economies, but also of our societies.
And in terms of the OECD itself, now your membership overlaps quite a lot with the G20. Do you see a role for yourself and for the OECD in helping to solve all those issues that you just mentioned?
Indeed, we have been very actively working on a number of areas with both the British organizers of the G20 as well as with the rest of our membership. We're working on the issue of transparency on exchange of tax information, the so-called tax havens, but it's not all about tax havens. This is just a generic name. There's been more progress in the last 2 weeks than there's been in the last 12 or 13 years on this matter. And the reason why we've made progress is because there is going to be a G20, because there is going to be a 2nd of April, because of the imminence of the meeting. We have helped to catalyze this process, but we wouldn't have been able to make so much progress without the meeting itself. But we're also making progress in contributions of things about investment protectionism or the fight against investment protectionism, on financial education, on the field of competition, where we have a competition committee that is concerned about how we are going to have a level playing field for competition with all those banks being now capitalized by the public sector. We're also working on the stimulus packages, comparing the stimulus packages, looking at the contents of the stimulus packages in order to see which one of the elements gives you more bang for your buck, what produces more incentives and what produces more jobs. This is, after all, a jobs crisis. It began as a financial crisis, went to an economic crisis, and is now a job crisis, and therefore a human crisis. We're going to have a meeting of all the ministers of labor this weekend in the G8 context, just to talk about the question of labor and unemployment. So we're working in a number of areas. We call, by the way, our project on the protection or the fight against investment protectionism. We call it Freedom of Investment Project, on which we've been working now for more than 2 years. We didn't start just because it was a crisis. So all these things of the OECD that are constantly being updated and upgraded with our committees, with our directors working on medium and long-term issues, are, of course, at the disposal and at the service of the G20 and of the rest of our membership, so that we can make a faster recovery.
And on the issue of protectionism, which you mentioned very strongly, I mean, are you confident that that there is a consensus about the need to avoid a return to protectionism, and actually the governments will stick to that? Because every now and again we do see governments take action that other governments see as perhaps protectionist. Are you confident that the wall can be held together, if you see what I mean?
Yes, I'm confident it can, and I think, of course, we should not lower our guard. But I can tell you something. There's been a lot more talk about protectionism, at least in the field of investment, than there has actually been actions leading to. In fact, this process started, 2 or 3 years ago, when there were a number of decisions that questioned whether we were really having an open investment regime in the world. Then there was a question of sovereign wealth funds, which came on top of this discussion. And now, of course, because of the crisis, we're talking about avoiding investment protectionism as much as trade protectionism. And yes, we should fight it with everything we've got. But the evidence we have measured objectively today, and we're preparing a paper that we're going to put out, that we're going to be sending to the G20, but also to all our membership about this particular issue, is let's keep our guard up, but it's not happening yet, or hasn't happened yet in any way which should really worry us excessively.
And finally, if I could ask you to sort of imagine yourself on the 3rd of April, or perhaps the 6th of April, how would you seek to measure the success of the outcome of the London Summit? How will we know that it's succeeded in the terms that you've talked about?
I have been a Minister of Finance and a Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I know that there are limitations to what even such an important group of countries can decide on a single day, on a single meeting, about the greatest economic recession that we've had in our lifetimes. There's no magic wands about here, but the greatest thing, the most important thing, is to give very clear signals on the short term about the regulatory issues, getting the banks not only on their feet, but also with mechanisms to get them to lend again, this separation of the so-called the bad and good assets, and then the recapitalization of the banks, and then, of course, new credit flows, and then the medium and the long-term recovery prospects, the exit strategies, the structural policies. These are things that one can do in the short period, and then some of the others you can point to with very strong, clear policy signals and a great commitment. For example, how are we going to get out of the increase of the debt and the increase of the deficits that we need for the stimulus packages, which we strongly support? And when in doubt, do it a little bigger, just in case. Now, many of the countries are going to have very serious fiscal pressures. But what signals do we give to the markets? Well, some of them are saying we're going to halve it by 2012 or 13 or whatever. Some are saying we're going to put some of the taxes back that we reduced. And some are talking about a balanced budget amendment in their constitutions. Well, there are decisions to be taken there. There's coordination to be made. There's beggar thy neighbor things to be avoided. There's a lot of work, but the signals, the meeting itself, and the fact that they give a very clear indication that they're going to continue to work together, that there's greater coordination like there was to save the financial system, like there was among the central banks, that there's going to be also coordination in terms of the stimulus packages and the recovery process, will give confidence, and confidence is what this game is about.
Gurria, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.